Hi, hello, it me, Munchie. Um, so, to get one of the things out of the way that you might be hearing, if you hear random cricket sounds in the background, it is because there's a lizard right over there. Yes. So, I could, quite frankly, talk about Five Nights at Freddy's for hours if given the opportunity. I have not been given that opportunity, so we're going to try to keep it brief. Fail miserably, and a lot of this is going to get cut. Yay! Um, so, I have been a fan of this franchise for basically since it came out. I've been following it for. Holy carpets, 9 years old already. How did that happen? Wow, I feel old. Um, so, I, uh, because I've been following it for a very long time, and I'm going to be honest, I have not played all of the games. I've played through the first four or five. Yeah, because I did play Sister Location. It was at Pizza Sim and uh, it was Pizza Sim up that I had problems with because of them not working exceptionally well on mobile and me not having a gaming thing. And now I have the Switch, which means I have slightly less excuses. Uh, I have played through. I have played through the Switch version of Pizza Sim, or not Pizza Sim. Boy, heckin' howdy. The this one, the brain. Yes. So I have not gotten to play through Ruin yet because, well, Ruin hasn't come out for the Switch yet. But I will be one of the first to admit that the security breach is a hot mess. It's got some problems. Now, the reason that I am a lot more willing to give it leeway is that this is the company's first. This is Steelwool's first attempt at like a big main open world game, and that is the exact reason why Scott chose them, I think, to make this game, because Scott has been known to usually prefer supporting smaller developers when having things made, especially for his own things. That's why he made the Fanverse initiative. That's why he's said, hey, you are free to make merchandise of any of my characters as long as you're not trying to sell them in big retailers. So I'm pretty sure that is exactly the reason that Scott chose Steelwool Studios as the people who got to make, Help Wanted and Security Breach, and now Ruin and Help Wanted 2 coming out later this year. That being said, this game has been out for a couple years now, and it is still buggy. And instead of fixing the bugs, they're working on Help Wanted 2. And, it would be great if they would worry about the things that are already a problem. Now, apparently there is a patch coming in the middle of this month that is supposed to be fixing some of the bugs that they found in Ruin after more people got to play it, and supposedly also a couple more bugs in the base game. And so I do acknowledge that they have been putting out patches and fixing these things slowly but surely. And so the other thing is, I give this game a lot more leeway than somebody who, well, has not been following it at all, because since I've been following it, I'm aware of the problems that they've had. I mean, Scott literally made Fury's rage because the game kept having to be pushed back because of how many problems they kept having, and then they had to forcibly rush it out when they did get it out, and because of that, that's why it was so buggy and glitchy and sad. And that is why Ruin is not an open world anymore, because that was the biggest problem everyone had with the base game, was getting fully and completely and 100% lost doing the things that they were trying to get done. And so also there's honestly, Ruin, at least from everything that I've seen, because I have absolutely no patience waiting for them to put it out on the console that I can play it on, and instead have watched so many people play through it, because I'm not good at waiting for things. I don't have much patience. And from everything that I've seen, it looks like it's significantly better than the base game, because they made everything a lot more clear. They made it a lot easier to know what you're supposed to do. And by golly gee, it looks like they've got a lot less bugs. That's important. I know a chunk of the problem with the bugs was also just how high, like, graphically everything was. But still, that's not really an excuse, I don't think. So while I do sort of defend them on that front, I also still have a little bit of a problem with the fact that it's been out so long and there are still so many bugs being found constantly. Regardless, though, the other reason why Security Breach has some problems is because they did literally admit that the higher-ups above them, I don't think that it was Scott himself, because Scott's known to not usually care as much. I think it was whoever else was above the group of people that was working on this game, forced them to change parts of the game because a couple of the theorists on YouTube in this community got the ending correct, or got parts of the ending correct. And they did explicitly admit that, which I'm sure helped absolutely nothing when it comes to the storyline of the game, how it's played, and how it runs. Because there's literally a movie's worth of lost footage, of lost voice lines, of cut maps that have been found in Security Breach, and some of them got re-implemented in Ruin, which everyone is happy with. So, as much as I would like to be, I guess, mad at Steelwool for how buggy the game is, I can't be, because I understand that it was mostly the fault of whoever was above them, whoever was above the team that was making this game, trying to force and rush them out. And honestly, I feel like it would have been a much better game had they not released the teasers and everything for the game so early. But with that, and with our favorite brand, Funko, deciding to leak all of the character designs early, and leak parts of the Pizzaplex early through their calendar that they put out before the game even came out, along with them putting out the character designs and the plushies and the figures way early. We got all of that, like, long before the game came out. And I'm sure that helped no one in terms of the people who were actually making the game feeling incredibly rushed. There was actually, Dawko did a interview with a lot of the people from Steel Wool, and this is exactly the sentiment that they kind of portrayed, was they were rushed, and that is why the game is kind of bad. So there are 6 total endings to the base game, and there's 3 total endings to Ruin. And Ruin confirms that one of the endings to the base game is canon, except for it's also very confusing because of how they set up those endings. All in all, Ruin, I feel like, is Ruin and the base game are both good games, but they had the opportunity to be so much better had they put a lot more time and effort into the games to fix all of the stupid little things and also get the story correct, and preferably try to make it so that you don't have to have kept up with the books in order to understand the game. Because that is one of the biggest criticisms that this franchise has right now, is that you can't understand as much of the story of the games anymore unless you're also keeping up with the book series. And unless you're a hyper nerd like me and you own all of the books and you've read them all, and you're continuously keeping up on all of the information coming out around the books, even if you haven't been 100% keeping up on it, fully playing the games, you aren't going to understand Ruin at all because of them choosing to grab one of the characters from the books and make it the main enemy in the game. And you aren't going to understand as much of what's going on. And that's kind of really sad, because they had the opportunity to make this separate canons altogether instead of trying to forcibly link them all together. There's so many characters already within the game lore franchise that they could have very easily replaced the Mimic, the ending boss of Ruin, with Ennard. Because Ennard from the End of Sister location has almost no information about him because we barely see him, her, they, them. We know just enough to know that it can and has done basically exactly what the Mimic's doing. All of the things in Sister Location have have parts of them that would lead them to being able to do this. Heck, in the blueprints for one of the characters, and I'm not going to go too much into spoilers here in case she decides she wants to play some of the other games, which would help her understand these a little bit more, but in one of the things for one of the characters in Sister Location, it specifically states one of the things that they can do is mimic voices. And if that isn't exactly what's going on, so instead of doing things the way that they did and making it so you have to have read the books in order to understand where the Mimic, this boss, this main antagonist character at the end of this game came from, they could have used one of the characters we already knew, we already had, barely had any screen time. That would have been the perfect way to bring a character back instead of just bringing in a whole new character. Also, bringing into question the canon, how much of the other endings are canon from the main game. And breathe. So, Security Breach and Ruin, both of them together, had the opportunity to be far greater than they became. And I'm not saying that they're... Well, I am kind of saying they're bad games. Visually, they are beautiful games. Canonically and story-wise, as one of my favorite theory YouTubers said, they took Freddy Spaghetti and they threw it at the wall to see what would stick. And Ruin feels like when they found out that the parts that they tried to make stick didn't stick. AKA when they realized nobody liked Peepaw Afton. They tried very hard to remove him from the canon after realizing that that didn't go as well as they had hoped. And the problem with that is you already brought him in when you had a very easy way to remove him from the canon completely with the game that you had made before this one. So, visually, this game is beautiful. Gameplay-wise, it's good if it was easier to get places, I would say. As in, like, the gameplay itself is great. The problem is that finding everything is confusing. It's a confusing map, and that's, I feel like, comes with the territory of it being a mall. Because I've always found malls incredibly annoying to try to get through and figure out where to go. So that could be a me problem. But a lot of people had that problem where they just didn't know where to go or what to do. There are so many glitches, even now still after they've fixed so many of them. I kind of feel really bad for yeeting someone who has not played any of the games before now into, quite frankly, the buggiest game. Because I was under the thought that by now most of the bugs had been fixed, and lo and behold, we found one that I can't find anyone else who has encountered before. And both the Reddit and the Discord have no idea what it is, or how to remove it without restarting from a previous save. So that seems about right. It seems to be a curse for a lot of the new players, somehow it seems like a lot of people who had not played any of the FNAF games before Security Breach are the ones that are finding so many bugs in Security Breach. I kind of feel a little bit bad about that. Story-wise, this game is good, but also just ever so slightly disappointing because we know what it could have been. Because Steel Wool very specifically said that several of the theorists got a couple of the endings correct, and so they had to change them. And the problem is that the ending, the specific ones that were brought up as being that were so much greater and made so much more sense and would have led to a far more interesting story. And instead of following the thing that they already had set, they had to change it. And this is, I feel like a little bit of a curse for FNAF is because of the sheer amount of highly intelligent people who have their eyes on this franchise and are always looking through this franchise and seeing what they can find. It is very difficult for developers to plant seeds for things and then not have them found and expounded upon before the game comes out. If that makes any sense. And I feel like that's a challenge that Steelwool wasn't as prepared for. When it was just Scott, not only did he know that this was how it was going to happen, but he would specifically plant misleading things in his places to avoid having people find what was happening. But that's also a lot more difficult of a thing to do if you are trying to make a AAA game, because you are trying to appeal to not only the hardcore fans, but also the new fans that are just coming in because of this game. So, I feel like that's why I give things like this a little more leeway. It's the same reason I give video game movies or TV series movies a little bit more leeway, because you have to realize, like the FNAF movie that's coming out in October, I don't expect that movie to follow the specific story that's been laid out for this entire thing. You know why? Because that movie is not being made for the hardcore fans. This movie is being made for someone who saw the thing and was like, oh, look, a neat horror movie. It's meant to draw people into the franchise, and so I don't know. I feel like that's why I'm a little bit more lenient towards the thing than some people are and could be. But, you know, that's just kind of my silly opinion. It was by no means great, and it had every opportunity to be significantly better. And so what I feel towards a Security Breach, and to a lesser extent Ruin, but a little bit towards Ruin, is not disdain or anger. It's a little bit more closer to disappointment. I love this game, and I love this franchise, but knowing how much better it could have and should have been had they been given the time that they needed, the time that they clearly needed based on how many bugs are still in the game, despite how many years it's been out. I feel like that, to me, proves that they should have taken more time instead of trying to rush it out for a holiday release, which is what they clearly had to do. So, I'm hoping that was not as horribly negative as it feels like in my brain, because I'm not joking when I say that I do in fact thoroughly love this game, these characters. These character designs for this game are amazing. I love them, both this game and Ruin is a little bit 50-50. I like most of the character designs in Ruin, except for Monty and Roxy could both use a little bit of help. But that might just be me. That might just be me looking at it as an artist, being like, why would you do, as an artist and as a FNAF fan looking at this going, you changed so many of the things that they don't look like their character anymore. Good job. Um, so, yeah, I don't, I don't exactly know how to wrap this up, other than by saying that please, if you're going to make a game and you're going to go through the effort of making a game, do it correctly. Make sure you remove as many of the bugs as you can immediately. As someone who has watched a lot of playthroughs of Ruin, I have also had the fun part of being in various streams where some of the playtesters of Ruin were in the stream saying, oh, they didn't fix that bug that I told them about. Steel Wool, please fix it. Please stop. I want to love your game so much more than I do. But when you're putting out games that are meant to draw new fans into a franchise, and the games that you put out are so full of bugs, even after they've been out for at least a year now, if not longer. I don't remember when Ruin came out because I got it late because I got it on the Switch. The Switch version actually seems to have significantly less bugs. I think because they had to down the graphics so much and they had to downsize it so much to fit on the Switch. So, in order to do that, they also had to remove so much of the unused content and everything that you can find in the PC version and the PS4 and 5 version and whatever. And I think because they had to do that, there's strangely a lot less bugs in the Switch version. The problem with the Switch version is that you do have to wait forever for it to stop, for it to come back, for it to work again. Not for it to work again, but for you to get the next part of the thing. Load times in Switch do tend to take a little bit longer because it's the Switch. I kind of just expect that. But Steel Wool, you're making a game, and this is the first big game that's been available multi-platform, not just you have it for your regular version, your PC and your mobile. This and the first Help Wanted were the first big games, and they're meant to draw in new people, right? And if you're drawing in new people by putting out a ridiculously buggy game, and then you're ruining their first impression of this franchise. Because you're putting out a game that has so many breaks and bugs that you can't get past them. And that's kind of why I think Security Breach had so many problems, was because, and I've had several friends say this, where they started Security Breach on a whim because they were curious about the franchise, and this was supposedly the biggest and best and newest AAA title for this franchise. And they came in and they stopped halfway through, not even, because there were so many bugs that they couldn't finish it. And that was when it first came out, which means now people are getting slightly further ahead before they're hitting these bugs that prevent them from going any further. And I just, please do better. I'm not the only fan that has this problem, but I'm seeing more and more, especially now that Ruin's come out, and there's more renewed desire to play the original Security Breach, that it's been mostly a lot of more hardcore fans that are even bothering to finish playing through security breach because they care about the franchise more than the specific game itself. And that's not how it should be. And this was not supposed to be me reprimanding a game company for their game, but here we are. Like, I would much prefer you have to continuously push back a game date and then the game comes out and it 100% is fully functional and actually works fully and completely, than to have this problem where the game comes out and then literally within that day you have to put out patches, say, to fix the game. And then I appreciate the fact that you're putting out patches to fix the game constantly, but you shouldn't have had to do that in the first place. I know I'm just a weeb in a chair behind a screen. Alright, I get that. My opinion means very little to you as a giant company. But I should not have to tell people who start up Security Breach as their first game to never override their previous save file, because you never know when there's going to be a glitch that's going to prevent them from going any further, and they're going to have to reset back to a previous save in order to hopefully go through it. That's not a thing that I should have to remind people of. I shouldn't have to tell people that. I guess the summary of this is, do better, Steelwool, please. Please do better. I would love nothing more than to be as fully in love with this game as I am with its characters, because I absolutely adore the characters in this game. I mean, I did an entire little heckin' video going through all of my plushies of literally exactly 2 characters in this game, because I love this character so much. But the game needs to have the gameplay and the story need to have as much work put into them as the visuals. There's a reason that the first several FNAF games did as well as they did, and it's because you could find the story there if you wanted to, but if you didn't want to go digging that far for the story, it still had gameplay that worked well. It still had the correct atmosphere, the correct feeling for the game. I just need for everything to actually have as much effort put into itself as each other. Because it's clear that there was a lot of effort put in, and then it got cut short. And I really, really don't want that to be a problem with Help Wanted 2. Now, we do have the strange advantage of the first Help Wanted having very few bugs in it, because it wasn't as rushed out, and I'm really hoping that that continues to be the case for Help Wanted 2. But yeah, that's all of my ridiculous thoughts on Security Breach, and how much I love/hate this game. It is a very clear love-hate relationship with this game, especially considering where this game and Help Wanted, the first Help Wanted, put the franchise in general, and confused all of the lore, and kind of made everything this one especially made everything a hot mess, story-wise, compared to the rest of the games. So, that's saying something, given that the rest of the games also have lore that is a hot mess, but at least it could be understood. If you actually looked for it, it could be understood. Yeah. Anyways, I think that's all of the things. I'm sure this is going to get cut into several little pieces because I accidentally babbled for like a half hour. Back to you, Brittany.